Hi guys, today we're going to talk about completing the square for a generalized standard form quadratic equation. So that looks like ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So that's a quadratic equation in standard form. You've got everything on one side of the equation and it equals 0. So in order to complete the square like we've been doing in our past few lessons, we're going to have to start by subtracting c from both sides so that we've got ax squared plus bx alone on the left, and that equals negative c. And then just like what we did last time, we now have to divide by the leading coefficient so that we'll have a leading coefficient of 1 so that it's actually a perfect square. So that gets us x squared plus b over ax equals negative c over a. Now that we've rearranged it like that, we can go ahead and start drawing boxes. So drawing the same kind of box we've been using before, we've got x on one side and x plus b over a on the other side. Then we can split that b over a piece in half and swing it down to make our almost square. So at that point, each side is x plus b over 2a, because when you do b over a divided by 2, that's the same as b over a times 1/2, and that gets you b over 2a. And then we've almost got our square. We fill in that missing piece, and the area of that missing piece is b squared over 4a squared, because if you've got b over 2a and you're squaring the whole thing, numerator is b times b, which is b squared. Denominator is 2a times 2a, which is 4a squared. And at that point, we're able to set up our equation that we can solve with square roots. So we've got x plus b over a squared equals b squared over 4a squared minus c over a. I put the b squared over 4a squared first just because if we've got a negative, we may as well have it as a subtraction. At this point, we're running low on space, so we're just going to go ahead and copy that over to the top of the whiteboard. So once again, that equation is x plus b over 2a squared equals b squared over 4a squared minus c over a. On the right-hand side now, we've got a couple of fractions. We want to make a common denominator so we can combine them. So that common denominator is 4a squared. So now the right-hand side is b squared over 4a squared minus 4ac over 4a squared. Then combining those, the right-hand side becomes b squared minus 4ac all over 4a squared. We can now go ahead and solve with a square root, remembering to have plus or minus. So we've got x plus b over 2a equals plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 4a squared. And if you've got a fraction and a square root, you can square root the numerator and denominator separately. So you've got x plus b over 2a equals plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over the square root of 4a squared, and the square root of 4a squared is 2a. So you've got x plus b over 2a equals plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Then subtracting b over 2a from both sides, you get x equals negative b over 2a plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. And now you've got two fractions with the same denominator, so you can combine them into one. You get x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And that is the final answer because it cannot be simplified anymore. That is actually called the quadratic formula, which we're going to have our next lesson on how to use that specifically. But for right now, please know that it is something you are going to have to memorize. And anytime you have a quadratic equation in standard form, you can plug in the coefficients a, b, and c into this formula, and you'll get the two solutions for x. So that's x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a is the quadratic formula.